Lesson 1.2, an Emic approach to research. And we're going to look at this using cayenne neck rings. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. So we're looking at what is an Emic approach and why do psychologists use it. These are SAQ topics only. Quick review. This is a nice simple way to review. Students discuss these with the person next to you. They make sure they can answer the green and then the orange and then the red. Okay. Depending on your time in your lessons, you might want to go through the answers or just trust that they can answer them. This is, again, just reviewing what we did yesterday. A small clip looking at how they study face preferences and how we know men typically prefer feminine faces and women prefer masculine faces, although interestingly that changes depending on where they are in the menstrual cycle. Alright, and then we'll say, look, the same isn't true for everyone. We have personal preferences, and then this leads into the idea that there are unique beauty standards. So we're going to look at this from an Emic approach, trying to understand culturally specific beauty standards and what constitutes beauty. So this is kind of an interesting 5-minute video that hooks into this idea. And in that video, they showed the woman wearing the cayenne neck rings, and then students discuss why. Why do you think they wear them? Short video again, going into more detail here. Why do they think they wear them? And then we can say, look, this is why we can use an Emic approach. We can study this culturally unique, specific behavior by doing qualitative interviews and surveys and going and asking them, why do you do this? So this is Chalk and Talk explaining, and just to help, often just with one example it doesn't make sense. So I've included here 3 separate examples of Emic approaches to research. One of them is on the blog looking at culturally specific symptoms of PTSD, the classic Margaret Mead study on Samoan teenage girls, and then this key study about cayenne neck rings. Right. So this is how we're going to address the Emic approach. And so this is, remember for SAQs, they have to have an example. They could use one of these 3. They could use the cayenne neck rings. They could use the study as an example. Or I even think they would be able to, if they can't remember the exact details of the study, they should be able to just remember the woman wearing the cayenne neck rings. And then they could use this as their example of hypothetically how and why could they use an Emic approach to studying these women. Okay, and then we've got notes. Now, I've included in the workbook space to do a practice question 2. I think now you've had 2 units to do the SAQs now, what I'm calling the ASACs. I don't know if that's going to take off, but it's just the section B ones where they get a problem or scenario and they have to apply their knowledge to that short answer question. And I would give this as a take-home assignment. Again, like everything, this is just a suggestion. So I've included an example answer. I'm not saying this is a perfect answer. It'd get a 4 or a 5 out of 6. I wrote it off the top of my head, but I was toying around with a structure to give students something specific to work off with this. I would encourage they have a brief introduction where they define the key term in the question, and then their body paragraphs, they make a point and then link it to the stimulus, and then make another point and link it to the stimulus, and then another point and link it to the stimulus. And then that way it's going to, because I think examiners are going to be very, very strict on the knowledge dumping, where students just dump everything they know about the topic and then do a cursory link at the end to the problem. This point apply, point apply, point apply, I hope will work better. And that's an example of how it could be done. So with an Emic approach, they would want to be planning out 3 key points they could make. Right, and those 3 key points could be just 3 different research methods, right? They could use interviews, qualitative interviews, they could use qualitative surveys, and they could use observations. And then they can talk about how and why they would use that in relation to understanding the moko of the Māori woman. Now, of course, you could change that as well to something that you think is more appropriate. Okay, anyway, that is Emic. Up next, we look at arranged marriages.